Dr. Anthony T. Massimini is one of the most important Catholic intellectuals and lay leaders in America. Born in 1928 into a large Italian-American family in South Philadelphia, Tony, as Dr. Massimini likes to be called, graduated from high school in 1945. He was offered a full scholarship to attend the University of Pennsylvania, but Penn would have to wait 2 decades for him to join its community. In 1959, he was ordained as a Catholic priest. He would go on to teach at St. Charles Borromeo Seminary in Philadelphia. In 1962, the brilliant young priest was stationed in Rome and participated with top church leaders in the Second Vatican Council, better known as Vatican II. Called into being by Pope John XXIII, Vatican II had its final sessions in 1965. The Council approved more than a dozen documents concerning how the Church relates to the modern world, to other religions, and to its own roughly 1 billion believers all around the world. Among the hundreds of church leaders in attendance at Vatican II were several future popes. 2 of them, Poland's Father Karol Wojtyła, who would then go on to become Pope John Paul II, and Germany's Father Joseph Ratzinger, who would later go on to become Pope Benedict XVI, was each then a young priest noted for his exceptional intellectual gifts and future leadership potential. The young American priest that was then widely recognized and touted in the same way was Father Massimini. His theological erudition and mastery of Latin made him indispensable to the American delegation. At Vatican II, he was favored to meet with Pope John XXIII himself, and he would later have a private moment at the beloved Pope's deathbed. Today, a half-century after Vatican II, the character and consequences of what was decided by the Council are still being discussed and debated. For 5 decades now, Dr. Massimini has explicated and lived out his beliefs concerning the meaning of Vatican II. After returning from Rome, he worked in the Archdiocese of Philadelphia. At the behest of his church superiors, he lectured widely on Vatican II proclamations regarding the importance of lay participation in church life, ecumenical dialogue with Protestant leaders, interfaith outreach to Jewish communities, and more. At various points, however, he was officially silenced, removed from his seminary teaching positions, and prohibited from teaching at another Catholic college. He was then assigned to the Penn Newman Center, the first such Catholic student life center at a secular university in the country. The Penn Newman Center was his last church post before leaving the priesthood. In 1971, he received dispensation from Pope Paul VI and returned to the laity. Thereafter, he earned a certificate in psychiatry at Hahnemann Medical School. He spent much of the 1970s as a teacher and administrator at Philadelphia's Thomas Jefferson Medical University. In the 1980s, he served as a psychotherapist at the city's Catch Community Health Clinic. Married as a practicing Catholic within the church, for 2 decades, Tony and his wife, Mary, lived among the Amish people in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. In the year 2000, he published The New Dance of Christ, Discovering Our Spiritual Self in a New, Evolving World. In recent years, he has launched a blog, 21st Century Catholic, written a handbook on the 21st Century Parish, completed a novel, conducted training for church officials in the Archdiocese of Camden, New Jersey, and continued public speaking on spirituality, the contemporary church, and more. Now in his mid-80s and still going strong, Dr. Massimini's lifelong intellectual and spiritual journey, his unique personal witness to Vatican II, has engaged and inspired people of all faiths and of no faith. With a doctorate in theology, study and practice in psychiatry, and writings on topics ranging from contemporary physics to classical philosophy, it is yet Tony's deep humility and heartwarming humor that define this humane and learned leader's character.
Yeah, when Pius XII died, the plan had been to have Montini from Milan become his successor. But Pius had, for some reason, not made him a cardinal. So they needed an interim. And so they picked this old man, a jolly old man, whom they thought would do nothing, So say, okay, you become Pope for a while, and then make Montini a cardinal, and then we'll pick up where Pius left off. Now, Pius, of course, Pius XII was an aristocrat. He was from an aristocratic Italian family, and he was an aristocratic Pope. He was above everybody. He expounded on every topic in the world and all that kind of thing. And the people were used to that kind of a Pope. And so they went and picked this other man who was completely different. And to try to explain him, I put it this way. You take St. Francis of Assisi, who was a nature mystic. He saw God active and present and active in all of nature, in the sun, the moon, the flowers, the animals. He just was beautifully conversant with God in all these forms. John 23rd was a man who saw God present and active in history. And he looked and he saw, what does God want for us now? And he called that reading the signs of the times. And so he wanted that. Now, also, he was just an unassuming man. When they would carry him into St. Peter's, he would say no, and he would get down, and he would walk, and he'd walk around, and when he was installed as Pope, he gave a talk that night, and he said in the equivalent in Italian, well, there's a new man at the top of the heap now. I mean, he would talk like that, and everybody immediately fell in love with him, immediately, because he was one of us. He was one of us, and it was a whole different experience. John 23rd, of course, surprised the church and the whole world. They expected him to be an interim pope, and one day he simply goes to a meeting with a group of cardinals and announces he wants to have an ecumenical council. There have only been 20 of them beforehand in the whole history of the church. And the report is his announcement was met with cool silence. These men were not ready for this. They didn't want it, and they saw no need for it. And so, but he said so they said okay, they would obey him. So he asked for preparation, and he wanted the Curia to create documents to send all the bishops of the world so that they would have their input to see what they wanted for this council. Now, what did he want? He was vague at first. He wasn't sure. He couldn't put it in good terms, but he just wanted to put the faith in the language of the people. He didn't want to have any more new doctrines, new pronouncements. Just take what we already believe. It's not in the language of the people. It's not getting to the people, and it's not getting to the everyday world. So put it in that language, which meant change the whole style of the church. It meant how do we approach our own laity, and how do we approach the world outside of the church? So that was a big change. The Curia did not want this. The Curia had created the names of their own picked people to work on the committees that were going to run the council. And their idea was they had all these documents which were all old-fashioned. They had prepared to give to the council, have their committees work with these documents, get the bishops of the council to rubber stamp them, and go home. Short council. And what happened? The very first thing that happened, Cardinal Leonard of France gets up and makes a motion. I suggest we put aside the names of the committees that were given to us and that we choose our own committee members. And applause breaks out all over St. Peter's. And there was a changeover right there. The bishops who were wondering what's going to happen realized, hey, I think we're in the majority, the progressives. So Cardinal Tisserand, who was running the session, without even asking for a vote, immediately said, the council's adjourned until we choose new committee members. It was almost like it was arranged. And boom, next thing you know, I think the council lasted 13, 14 minutes per session, and we were adjourned. One of the major goals and purposes of Vatican II was to revision the church and to reform it, to give it new form, literally. Because for the centuries before, especially the last 200 years beforehand, it had become a very monarchical institution. The institution of the church had become the major focus of identity of the church. And it was a pyramid. The Pope was on top. It was as if God spoke to the Pope, who spoke to the bishops, who spoke to the priests and the nuns, who spoke to the laity. And the laity had nobody to talk to. So they kicked their dogs when they got mad, because it was that. And that was the framework of the institutional church. Now, Vatican II said we're going to re-envision that. and everything goes from there. And so I would, if you could just kind of imagine the circle, put the church right in the middle of the Vatican documents. Here's the church. It is now not that institution. It's still an institution, but that is not the first kind of focus that we give. It is a people. It is a living, moving people in history. And these people are all the baptized. All the baptized. The people of God, from the lowest lay person through up to the Pope, or whichever direction you want to go, it's all. And everybody enjoys equal baptismal dignity. We become Catholics and Christians because we are baptized. The church comes into existence because people are baptized. That's the first thing. Among the baptized, certain people are chosen for servant leadership. But they are servant leadership in and for the church. Lumen Gentium is the document on the church. It's the first two words of the document. It means the church is the light of the world. And in it, it explicitly, in detail, goes through the various Protestant churches, the Jewish church, the Jewish religion, and outside of the Jewish religion, other religions in the world. And it goes as far explicitly to mention even people who never heard of God and never heard of Christ. If they live in goodwill as a mark of their life, there is salvation available for them. All of this is explicitly stated in Lumen Gentium, in the document on the church. It's there, explicit. I reported this to the Chancery office. I said I received a lot of invitations to speak in Protestant churches. They said, okay, go ahead and do it. And it started me on a career, because almost once a week I was at a different Protestant church speaking on ecumenism, being extremely well received, warmly received, embraced. At the main line, out in the main line, there was a Presbyterian church I spoke, and at the end, the minister came over to me and he embraced me. And he said, when a Scottish Presbyterian minister embraces a Safoli priest, something's happening, he said. And everybody laughed and cheered. That was the spirit of the day. It was beautiful. It was a beautiful thing. Then the Jews found me. And so I was invited to the different synagogues. And the first one I went to was the mainline temple in Ballackinwood, right near St. Joseph's College, now university. So I pulled into the parking lot, and it's full, except for one empty space that had a barricade in front of it. As I pulled in, two men ran out, removed the barricade, and motioned me in. Naively, I said to myself, there must be something else going on here tonight. And so I said that to the men. I said, goodness, what's going on? You got all these cars. He said, Father, we're all here to hear you. He said, you're the first priest that ever came and talked to us. So I went in and I walked in, and there the Rabbi Theodore Gordon, a beautiful fatherly white-haired man, start walking toward me, tall man, with a big smile. And as I'm approaching him, he says to me, well, there you are. Where have you been? You're late. And I panicked. The first priest ever to talk to this Jewish synagogue. So I look at my watch. I said, Rabbi, you asked me to be here at 8 o'clock. It's 7:45. I'm 15 minutes early. He said, you're 2,000 years late. Where have you been? He said, and we immediately became friends. It was a beautiful thing. And I spoke to the Jews and I said, you know, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob are my fathers as much as your fathers. Moses is my father. And all the Jewish prophets and all the people of the Jewish Bible, they're all the people of our faith too. We accept them all and we believe them. And you are our older brothers and sisters. And you have given us this beautiful faith that you have handed over to us through our brother Jesus Christ. And I thank you for giving us Jesus. And I'm sorry for all the things we do. I apologize to you for all the anti-Semitism that's happened over the last 2,000 years. Everybody in that synagogue started to cry. It was such an emotional, deeply emotional time. They all in tears. And at the end, they didn't applaud. They just walked up to me. I think every one of them hugged me. Every one of them. It was the most beautiful, beautiful thing that you could imagine. And then later on, I was invited to another synagogue, and it was a Friday evening, and it was a small group, and this young man gets up, and he says to me, you know what? I just graduated from college, and for the last 2 years, I had the same roommate, and he was Catholic. And every day for the last 2 years, he told me, if you don't become a Catholic, you're going to hell. And I said, well, I said, here you are in the synagogue on a Friday night, so what happened? It didn't work. He laughed. He said, no, it didn't work. I'm still here. So I said, you're still a Jew? He said, yes. I said, okay, let me ask you. Do you believe God wants you to be a Jew? He said, yes, I do. I said, let's get this straight. You believe in your heart of hearts that God wants you to live your entire life as a Jew? He said, yes, I do. I said, young man, if you become a Catholic, you're going to go to hell. And everybody, well, I said, well, you'd be a hypocrite, wouldn't you? He said, yes. I said, God doesn't want hypocrites. I said, just you're doing fine. And this is how I got along with the Jews. It was especially beautiful with them. Well, at one synagogue, I said to the, hey, Rabbi, I said, Rabbi, you have to excuse me, I talk like this. He said, so do we. And it went like that all the time.